The economy machine works in 30 minutes. The economy works like a simple machine, but many people don't understand it, or they don't agree on how it works. And this is where a lot of needless economy is suffering. I feel a deep sense of responsibility to share my simple but practical economy template. Though it's unconventional, it has helped me to anticipate and to set safe for global financial crisis. And it has worked well for me for over 30 years. Let's begin. Though the economy might seem complex, it works in a simple mechanical way. It's made up of a few simple parts and a lot of simple transactions that are repeated over and over again zillion times. These transactions are above all else driven by human nature, and they create three main forces that drive the economy. Number one, productivity growth. Number two, short-term debt cycle. Number three, the long-term debt cycle. Well, look at these three forces and hitting them on top of each other create a good template for tracking economy movements and figuring out what's happening now. Let's start with the simple part of economy transactions. An economy simply sum of transactions are making up. And a transactions is this very simple thing. You make transactions all the time. Every time you buy a Simpson, you create a transaction. Each transaction consists of barrier exchange money or credit with the seller for goods, services, or financial asset. Credit spending just like money. So adding together money to expand, you might credit spend, you could know the total spending. Total amount spending drives the economy. If you divide the amount spent by the quantity sold, you get the price. And that's it. That's your transaction. It's a building block of economy machine. All cycles, all process in economy driven by transaction. So if you can understand the transaction, you can understand the whole economy. A market consists of all the buyers or the sellers are making transactions for the same thing. For example, there is a wheat market, a car market, the stock market, a market for millions of things. An economy consists of all of the transactions all of its market. If you add to total spending and total amount quarterly sold in all of the market, you everything need to understand the economy. First, it's just simple. People, businesses, banks, the government all engage transactions to what just described. Exchange money and credit for goods, services, and financial assets. The biggest barrier in sale is the government, which consists of two important parts. A central bank government thing collects taxes, expensive money, and a central bank, which is different from other buyers and sellers because it controls the amount of money and credit the economy. It does this by influencing interest rate, printing new money. For these reasons that we see the central bank is an important credit flow credit. I want you to pay attention to credit. Credit is the most important part of the economy and probably least understood. It's the most important part because the biggest and most valuable part. Just like buyers and sellers go to the market to make transactions, so the lenders and borrowers. Lenders usually want to make money to into more money, and borrowers might buy something they can afford, like a house or a car. But I want to invest in something like a student business. Credit can help both lenders and borrowers get what they want. Borrower is promised to repay the amount borrowed. Pretty simple. Plus additional, credit international. When interest rate is high, less borrow because it's expensive. When interest rates low, borrow increases because it's cheaper. When borrowers promise to repay, and lenders believe them, credit is created. And if people can agree to credit out of thin air. That's simple enough. The credit tricky because they have a different name. As soon as credit is created, it immediately leads to debt. Debt is a processed random and a liability to borrow. In the future, when the borrower repays the loan plus interest, The asset and the liability disappear, and the transaction is settled. So why your credit is so important? Because when borrower receives credit using inevitably increases the spending. And remember, spending drives the economy. This is because a person's spending is another person's income. Think about it. Every dollar you spend, someone else earns, and then every dollar you earn, someone else spends. So when you spend more, someone else earns more. When someone's income rises and makes lenders more willing to lend money because now it's more worthy of credit. A credit-worthy borrower has two things: ability to repay and collateral. Having a lot of income relation to themselves, you usually repay. And in inventory can repay, he has a valuable asset uses the collateral that can be sold. This makes lenders feel comfortable lending money. So increases the income allows increased borrow, which allows increased spending. And since more one person's spending is another person's income, this rate more increases borrow, and so on. This self-increase owner's power is the economic growth and why you have the cycle. In a transaction, you have to give something in order to get something, and how much you get depends on how much you produce. Over time, we learn that accumulated knowledge raises our living standard. We call this productivity growth. Those in event of hard-working ratio productivity in the living standard faster, and those in complacency raise. But that is necessarily true of the short run. Productivity matters most long run, but credit matters most short run. This is because productivity growth doesn't fluctuate much, so it's not worth consumer even inquiry, and in process consume less than you produce when you have to pay it back. That's doing things too big cycle. 5 years, 75 to 100 years. Where most people feel the strain to typically to see the cycle because they see them too up close day by day, week by week. In this chapter, we are going to step back and look at these three big processes and how they interact to make up our experience. As mentioned, swings around or not due to how much innovation, hard work there is. They are primarily how much credit there is. Let's for a second imagine an economy without credit. In this second economy, only way increases my spending is to increase my income. What's required being a little bit more productive and do more work. Increases productivity is the only way for growth. This my spending is another person's income. The economy grows every time I or any more as it from transaction influenced our ratio production while the products but because we borrow, we have a cycle. This isn't due to regulation, it's due to human nature and the way the credit works. Think of borrowing as simply a way of pulling spending forward. In order to buy something you can afford, you need to spend more than you make. To do this, we change your borrow from your future self. In doing so, we create time in the future that you need to spend less than you make in order to pay back. It very quickly resembles a cycle. Basically, anytime you borrow, you create a cycle. This is true for individual as it is for the economy. This is why understanding credit is so important because it sets into motion a mechanical, predictable series of events that will happen in the future. This makes credit different from money. Money is what you settle transactions with. When you buy your beer from bartender with cash, the transaction is settled immediately. But when you buy your beer credit, it's like starting barter. You saying the promise to pay in the future. Together you bartender create an asset and a liability. You just created the credit out of thin air. It's not to be a paid barter later that the asset your liability disappear, the debt goes away, and the transactions are settled. The reality is most of people call money is actually credit. The total amount of credit in the United States is about $50 trillion, and the total amount of money is only about $3 trillion. Remember, in an economy with credit, the only way it increases your spending is to produce more. But in an economy with credit, you can also increase your spending by borrowing. As a result, economic credit more spending allows incomes to rise faster predictably over the short run, but not over the long run. The outcome is low. Credit is necessarily something bad just to cross its cycle. It's bad when a financial's overconsumption but can pay back. However, it's good when the future they allocate the resources and produces income so you can pay back to them. For example, if you borrow money by big TV, it doesn't generate income pay back to them. But if you borrow it to say buy a tractor and let your tractor and harvest more crops and more money, and then you can pay back to them in living standard. In an economy with credit, we can follow the transactions and see how credit creates growth. Let me give you an example. Suppose you earn $100,000 a year, have no doubt. You are credit worthy enough to borrow $10,000, say on a credit card. So you can spend $110,000 even though you only earn $100,000. Since your spending is another person's income, someone is earning $110,000. The person earning $110,000 will know they can borrow $11,000, so he can spend $21,000, even though he has only earned $110,000. His spending is another person's income, and by following the transaction, you can begin to see it process works in a self-reinforcing pattern. Remember, borrowing creates cycle, and if the cycle goes up, it eventually needs to come down. This results into the short-term debt cycle. As economic activity increases with expensive, the first phase of the short-term debt cycle, spending continuing increases and prices to the right. Start right, increases in spending is fueled by credit, which can be credit installed out of thin air. When the amount of spending and incomes grow faster than the production of goods, prices rise. When prices rise, we call this inflation. The central bank does worry too much inflation because it causes problems. Seeing prices rise, it raises interest rates. With higher interest rates, fewer people can afford to borrow money, and the cost to the existing debt rises. Think about this as monthly payments on your credit card going up. Because if people borrow less and have higher debt repayments, they have less money left over to spend. So spending is slow. The incentive is one person's spending is another person's income. Incomes drop, and so on and so forth. When people spend less, prices go down. We call this deflation. Economic activity decreases, and we have a recession. If the recession becomes too severe and inflation is no longer a problem, the central bank will lower interest rates to cause everything to pick up again. With low interest rates, the repayments are reduced and borrowing and spending pick up. And you see another expansion. And you can see the economy works like a machine. In the short-term debt cycle, spending is concentrated only by the willingness of lenders and borrowers to provide and receive credit. When credit is easily available, there is an economic expansion. When credit isn't easily available, there's a recession. And note this cycle managed by the central bank. The short-term debt cycle typically lasts 5 to 8 years and happens over and over again for decades. But notice that the bottom and the top of each cycle finish with more growth in the previous cycle and with more debt. Why? Because people pursue it. The inclination borrow and spend more instead of paying back down. It's human nature. Because a long traces the time that is faster than income created a long-term debt cycle. Despite people becoming more in debt, lenders even more pre-extend credit. Why? because everyone thinks things are going great. People are just focused on what's been happening lately. And what's been happening lately? Incomes have been rising. Asset value are going up. The stock market rose. It's a boom. Financial asset with borrow money. When people do a lot of that, we call it bubble. So even though we have been growing, incomes have been growing nearly as fast to offset them. Let's call the ratio of debt to income the debt burden. So long as incomes continue to rise, the debt burden stay manageable. At the same time, asset value is lower. People borrowing huge amounts of the money by asset invest, causing their price to rise ever high, even higher. People feel wealthy. So even the thing accumulates of lots of debt, rising incomes and asset value to help borrow during credit fraud and long time. But this obviously cannot continue forever, and it doesn't. Over decades, the burden slowly increases, creating larger and larger repayments. At some point, the repayments run past the income, forcing people to cut back on the stand. And soon, incomes begins to go down, which means people rest creditworthy, causing borrowing to go down. Their repayments continue to rise, which makes spending drop even further, and the cycle reverses itself. This is the long-term debt cycle. Peak. Debt burdens have simply become too big. For the United States, Europe, and much of the rest of the world, this happened in 2008. It happened for the same Japan is 1989 and the United States 1929. Now the economy begins to deleverage. In a deleveraging, people cut spending, incomes fall, credit is fear, asset prices drop, banks get squeezed, stock market crash, social tensions rise, and the whole things are started on the feet of the other way. As incomes fall, the need payment rise, borrow gets squeezed. No longer credit worthy, credit drive stop, and borrowers come no longer enough funding for the daily payments. Scrambling to fill this hole, borrowers proceed to sell assets. The rush to sell assets pulls across the market at the same time spending flow. This is a market start collapses. The real stock market can spell trouble. As asset prices drop, the value of the collateral borrowers can drop. This makes borrowers even less creditworthy. People feel poor. Credit life rapidly disappears. Less spending, less income, less wealth, less credit, less borrowing, and so on. It's a vicious cycle. This appears similar to a recession, but the difference here is that interest rates can be low to save them. In a recession, lowering rates works to stimulate borrowing. However, in the leverage lowering interest work because interest rate already to soon was 0%. So the stimulate end. Interest rate is the United States 0% during the deleveraging of the 1930s and again in 2008. The difference between a recession and a deleveraging is that the deleveraged borrowers' debt burdens have simply got too big and can be relieved by lowering interest rates. Let us realize that debt funds have become too large to ever be fully paid back. Borrowers have lost their ability to repay, and their collateral has lost value. They feel qualified to them. They don't even want more. Lenders stop lending, borrowers stop borrowing. Think of the economy as being not credit worthy, just like an individual. So, what do you do while leveraging? The promise is that burdens are high and must come down. There are four ways it can happen. 1. People, businesses, and government cut their spending. 2. Debt reverse from this structuring. 3. Wealth is redistributed from the haves to the have-nots. And finally, 4. The central bank prints new money. These four ways have happened in everything the leveraging modern history. Usually spending is corporate, as we just saw before businesses and even governments have tightened their belts and cut their spending so that they can pay down their debt. This is often referred to as austerity, and borrowers stop taking on new debt and start paying down old debt. You might expect that burden to decrease. But the opposite happens. Because spending is cut, and one man's spending is another man's income, it causes incomes to fall. They force the debts to repaid, and they deposits actually get worse. A machine, this causes spending is deflationary and painful. Businesses are forced to cut costs, which means less job and higher employment. This leads to next step. Debt must be reduced. Many borrowers find themselves unable to repay their loan, and the borrower's debt and lender's asset. When a borrower doesn't repay the bank, people get nervous that the bank won't be able to repay them, so they rush to withdraw their money from the bank. Banks get squeezed, and people, businesses, and banks default on their debt. This economic contraction is a depression. A big part of the depression is people discovering much of what they thought was their wealth is really there. Let's go back to bar. When you bought beer and put it in a bartender, you promise to repay the bartender. Your promise became the asset of bartender. But if you break the promise, if you don't pay back, concentration the fall in your bartender. And the asset to hedge isn't worth it. It has basically disappeared. Many lenders don't want their assets to disappear and agree to restructuring. Then restructuring means lenders get paid back less or get paid for long time pay. Or the rolling interest rates first agree. Somehow a contract is proclaimed that reduce debt. Lenders would rather have a little of something than all of nothing, even though debt disappears. The restructuring causing income and asset value to disappear faster. So the debt burden continues to get worse. Like store spending debt reduction is also painful and deflationary. All of this impacts and increased spending, lower inflation has risen, means government protects. At the same time, it increases spending because employment has risen. Many are unemployed, and bond saving in need to finance from the government. Additionally, governments create stimulus plans and increases their spending to make up for the decreases in the economy. Government budget deficits explode in the development because they spend more than they earn in taxes. This is what's happening when you hear about the budget deficits on the news. To fund their deficit, governments need to either raise taxes or borrow money. But with incomes per money plane, who has the money come from? The rich. Since governments need more money, since wealth is heavily concentrated in hands of a small percentage of the people, governments naturally raise taxes on the wealthy, need to pay specialties of redistribution of wealth in the economy. For the haves to the have-nots who are suffering begin to resent the wealthy haves. The wealthy have been squeezed by the weak economy. Falling asset prices and higher taxes begin to resent the have-nots. If the depression continues, social discord can break out. Not only the tension rise within countries, they can rise between countries, especially very incredible countries. This situation can lead to political change that can sometimes be extreme. In the 1930s, it led to Hitler coming to power. War is in the France, United States. The prices in town in the crisis. Remember, most of what people thought was money was actually credit. So when credit disappears, people don't have enough money. People are disappear fight for money. And you remember who can print money? The central bank can. Having already lowered its interest rate to near zero, it's forced to print money. Unlike current spending, debt reduction and wealth redistribution, printing money, inflation and stimulator. stimulus inevitably. The central bank print new money out of thin air and use it to buy financial assets and government bonds. It happened in the United States during the Great Depression and again in 2008 when the United States Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, printed over $2 trillion. Other central banks around the printing of money too. By buying financial assets with this money, it helps to buy asset prices, which makes people more creditworthy. However, this only helps those who own financial assets. You see, the central bank can print money, but it can only buy financial assets. The central government, on the other hand, can buy goods and services and put money in the hands of the people, but it can't print money. So, in order to stimulate the economy, the two must cooperate. By buying government bonds, the central bank essentially raises money to government, allowing it to run off deficits and increases spending on goods and services, with programs and employment benefits. This increases people's income as well as the government's debt. However, it will lower the economy's total debt burden. This is a very risky time. Policymakers need to balance the full weight of debt burdens to come down. The deflationary waves need to balance with the inflationary waves in order to maintain stability. The balance correctly, there will be a beautiful leveraging. You see, leveraging can be ugly or it can be beautiful. How can I leverage be beautiful? Beautiful. Even though the leveraging is a difficult situation, handling a difficult situation the best possible, beautiful. Out of the beautiful depth, like the kind of extend leveraging. In a beautiful leveraging, debt decline relative to income. Real economic growth is positive and inflation isn't a problem. It is achieved by having the right balance. The right balance requires something mix of current spending, reducing debt, transaction rate, and printing money so that economic social stability can be maintained. People escape printing money if raises inflation. It won't erase offset foreign credit. Remember, spending is won't matter. All dollar spending, paying for more money has the same process is pay for spending with credit. By printing money, the central bank demands this fear is credit of increases with an amount of money. In order to run turns things around with income, form of income that gotta get a rate of income higher than the rate of interest on the accumulated debt. So what do I mean by that? Basically, income needs to go faster than debt goes. For example, what's some country going through leveraging house debt income ratio 100%? That means the amount that is the same amount of income countries maximum. Now think about the interest rate on the debt. Let's say it's 2%. If that growing 2% because comes it only growing around 1%. You never reduce the debt burden. You need to print enough money where should borrow interest. However, printing money could easily be used because it's easy to do the perfect into the alternatives. The case to avoid printing too much money and causing unacceptably high inflation the way Germany did during its deleveraging in the 1920s. Its following make-chip balance, deleveraging is so dramatic. Growth is slow, but debt burdens go down. Let's beautiful deleveraging. When incomes begin to rise, borrow begins to appear more creditworthy, and borrow appear more creditworthy. Lenders begin to lend money again. The burdens finally begin to fall. Able to borrow money, people can spend more. Eventually, the economy begins to go down, leading to reflation prolonged long-term debt cycle. So the deleveraging process can be horrible and handled badly. If handled well, it will eventually fix the problem. It takes roughly a decade or more for debt for economic activity to get back to normal, hence the term was taken. In closing, Of course, the economy is a little bit more complicated than this temporary suggests. However, rank the short-term debt cycle on top of the long-term debt cycle, and the rank them for both of the top of the productivity goal run, it gives a reasonable contemporary for seeing where deep down will be all right now and we are probably headed. So in summary, there are three rules of thermodynamic accurate table correct, okay? Takeaway from this. First, don't ever rise faster than income because your debt burdens will eventually cost you. Second, don't have income rise faster than productivity because you eventually become uncompatible. And third, you do all you can to raise your productivity because in the long run, that's what matters most. This is simple advice for you, and it's really advice for a policymaker. You might be surprised, but most people, including most policymakers, don't pay enough attention to this. This template has worked for me, and I hope it will work for you. Thank you.